Hopefully we can scare him away. Okay. Back here again. I think it's Sunday. Sunday for us, which means it's Saturday for everybody at home in North America anyway. 9 in the morning, I think. And we both went to the gym already this morning and had some breakfast. And Sarah's going to go out and grab some rays. So, I'm going to relax a little bit, get caught up with some stuff, do this. And it only took, get this one, Wi-Fi here. It doesn't matter where I go. The Wi-Fi took, I think, 2 days for the last video to load up to the channel, so whatever. Now, what do we got? I'm going to do a real good little bit of a, not a rant, but some angles and some thoughts on the moon landing at the end of this video, right? First, we're going to hear some voices, no matter what. Now, this email is titled Encounter Story. Steve, thank you, sir, for your videos on the subject of these beings. You're welcome, and it's too easy. I found it hard and almost impossible to explain to the maybe 5 people I've ever told the feelings, emotions, and the fear that goes along with an encounter. Like you said, it's life-changing. For me, not a good one. My encounters were all in Southwest Alabama at my hunting club. It started in 1998. As far as I can tell, looking back and piecing things together, for several years I would try to rationalize some things, strange things, sounds, strange things with trees and rocks. I had 4 corn feeders out that I filled every week during the summer. Some weeks it would jump from 600 pounds to 1,200 pounds. The landowners raised hogs and cattle. The guy who had the hogs told me he thinks a bear is opening the 55-gallon drums of feed. He found one of the drums down in the bottom of the ridge near the creek. I looked at the drums. They weren't damaged. Just the rings were taken off. And bears don't do that. And back then, there wasn't any bears in central or most of Alabama. Even now, they are rare. Sometimes calves and hogs come up missing. I think they thought we had something to do with it. There's never any blood, hair, guts, or bones found. I often heard the classic whistles, whoops, the mimicking of owls, coyotes, and on one morning, hunt a peacock and kookaburra calls that surrounded me. No way, a kookaburra in Alabama. And I've even had acorns thrown at me. Crazy shit. I asked the landowners, guys at local hardware and feed stores, if they knew of anyone who had peacocks or have ever heard any calls, and they didn't. And I never heard them again. I've also come across weird things with trees and sticks and rocks. I've noticed that just before an encounter, or when these beings are near, the woods go silent. Daytime, the birds go silent, and during the night, the frogs and crickets go silent. And when the woods go silent, or the hair on the back of your neck stands up, be on high alert. It wasn't until 2006 my brain had to deal with what I was really dealing with. When I hunted the afternoon's hunt, I would typically stay till the sun went down before I would get down from my stand. If there were any deer around me, I would wait until they moved off before I got down, so not to give up my location. I'm going to try to condense this. On this particular hunt, right at dark, I had what I thought were deer all around me. About the time things seemed to be settling down, I heard what sounded like a car hood being hit with a baseball bat 3 times. That's a weird description. I got pissed off, thinking someone was down on the bottom, below and to the right of me. No one should be on the property. Then I hear something running uphill towards me. 2 deer run and stop right under my stand. They look back towards where the banging came from. Then they started looking down and to the left of me. Then 3 loud tree knocks came from about 100 feet to the left of where the metal banging started. The deer took off and ran up the hill behind me. It sounded like the world's strongest man hitting a telephone pole with a baseball bat 3 times. Then, every minute or so, about 100 feet apart each time, going across the bottom below me, and then up the hill to the left of me, all the way up the dirt road, about 7 to 8 locations. I was puzzled, because I've never heard footsteps and didn't see any light from a flashlight. The primeval fear set in, when I realized the noise or pitch of the sound of the wood knocks had the same exact sounds. The section of forest I was in, mostly pines with a few hardwoods, scattered cedar trees. I thought whatever's beating those trees were picking the same type of tree, which I guessed was cedar trees, not randomly hitting trees like soft pines. And had to have an opposing thumb. I knew no human could walk through that area without making a sound and without a flashlight. There's 6 to 8 foot tall briars, and in that area I have lost gloves and hats and wouldn't go back for them. My brain started spinning with the fear of realizing that there are Sasquatch in Alabama. I remember thinking, they're not supposed to be here. And if they're real, they're supposed to be in Washington or Canada, not Alabama. Everything was dead quiet for a few moments, and then the wood knock started again, but in reverse order, in the exact spots and same trees, in the exact spots and same 3 hits on each tree. Still no sound of movement, footsteps, just the wood knocks. I've never been so scared in all my life. I kept flicking the safety on and off of my rifle because I couldn't remember if it was on or off. I was trying to keep it off safety. I was so scared that I couldn't climb down. I think it was about 2.5 hours later before I did. I waited until the full moon was high enough so I could see all around me, and it was a long and scary walk back. The hair on the back of my neck went up 4 times until I got to the fence of the clubhouse. I was sick to my stomach for almost 2 days. I felt a lot like I was jet-lagged. The fear I felt was unexplainable. I've been scared to the point of thinking I'm going to die. Like swimming out from the beach a few miles and had sharks surround us. Crawled into a small cave with a mountain lion in it, was chased by a bear, fell down a cliff. Not like the fear of, okay, I'm going to die and this is how I'm going to go. It's so much more than that. I still don't know what that feeling is all about. This encounter and 3 up-close encounters all made me feel like that. I'm sorry, the 3 up-close encounters I'm not ready to go into. I still get anxiety over it. It's just too hard to go through in my head. It's like reliving it again. It's taken this long to get this much out. Even now, the feeling sucks. I've only told 3 people about the up-close encounters, one of which is my best friend and a member of the hunting club. His reply was kind of funny. He said, "I know you don't lie, and I believe that you believe." I think my wife thinks the same thing. She swears she believes me. I just think until you run into one of these things yourself, your mind can't wrap around it. Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. I consider myself to be an open-minded person, and I really didn't think these things existed. God, I wish I could go back to those days of not knowing. Yeah, how many people think that thought? I've thought that thought a few times for sure. But then my quest for truth overrode it big time. But during the summer, I think 2007, when clearing trails, setting stands, 2 days in a row on the way back to the clubhouse, on 4-wheelers, we had trees across the road. One was a green, as in live, 20-foot top of a red oak tree, vines still attached that went back some 25 to 30 feet to the trunk of the tree. It appeared to be twisted and snapped off. Another summer, not sure of the year, I cut some trees down to make a shooting path, laying them down away from the path. The next morning, the trees were laying across the path. I had to cut them up into small sections to move them out of the way. Bastards. I had 3 deer for sure, more like 5. One that would have been my biggest buck ever taken from me. See, now that is what I don't know why, but that's in the back of my mind all the time, because for me, when I shoot a deer, it's because usually I've been after it for a long time, and I would not want that. That would really make me blow a gasket. But I finally got an arrow in my dream buck and they took it. I was bow hunting and had two of them come in on me just as it was breaking daylight. They were talking back and forth until they got downwind of me. Then they just shut up. It sounded like Russian or German mumbling. It sounded to me like it may have been a male and a female, or a big and smaller one. What was weird was they sounded close enough to be able to see them, but I couldn't even hear their footsteps. The morning after the 2006 encounter, I forced myself to go hunting for the next 2 days, and I never left the dirt road. Damn. And for the next few years, I half-ass hunted, almost never going in or out of the woods at dark, never at ease in the stand, staying close to camp, never going where I normally hunted. From the 2006 encounter through 2008, things ramped up, which at the time I had the 2,000 acres leased to myself. Side note, looking back after doing lots of searching on the internet, I think they thought I knew they were there back in 2004. And I think they thought I could see in the dark because I didn't use my flashlight most of the time when walking down the trails to my stand. And back in the 2006 encounter, I think the reason I didn't hear any movement sounds is because there were about 7, 8 of them. They never had to move. I think they were flushing the deer into the ambush, into a ambush, and I screwed it up. Then I think they were trying to scare me out of there. At the end of the 2008 season, the end of the 2008 season was really bad. At night, I had tapping on the bedroom windows of my camper. I thought it was the wind blowing vines against the windows, so I cut the vines down. The tapping happened again, so I trimmed the limbs of the tree. The tapping happened again, so I cut down the only shade trees I had. The next time the tapping started, I looked up at the window, and this time there wasn't anything hindering the backlit night sky. What I saw was a big silhouette of a domed-shaped head and shoulders. The front section where the coupler was, the fifth-wheel camper, is where the beds were. The bottom of the floor area was about 4 to 5 feet from the ground. That put the bottom of the 2x4 window about 7 feet. The curve of its shoulders were just inside of the bottom edge of the window, its head just over the top. I'm freaking out just typing this. I froze in fear, then rolled over and prayed for daylight. I ended up taping some heavy-duty black lawn trash bags over the windows. I did the same thing to the bedroom windows at my house. These things really screwed me up. I got married in 2017. My wife didn't buy the story of trying to cut out the morning sun so I could sleep in. So April of that year, she was the second person I told most of what I experienced. She said that she believes me because of the fact I kept breaking down when I was telling of the up-close encounters. It's like reliving it again. 3.5 hours later, I had to stop. I felt physically and mentally exhausted. The fear that I got from the up-close encounters is a deep, primeval fear, way beyond the, oh my God, I'm going to die fear. It's hard to explain. And now here's a tip from your Uncle John. Don't ever shoot at these things. In the same 2008 season, I arrived at the hunting club at around 9 p.m. Friday night, unload the truck, lay out my gear for the morning hunt, and jump in the bed. About 1 a.m., I awoke to coyotes yapping and howling. They sounded like they were fighting each other in 3 different spots around my camper. Some fighting behind the camper, some in front by the dirt road. And what really freaked me out was the ones on the porch outside the door. So I grabbed my .357 Magnum, flipped on the porch light, and jumped out the door. And shit was crashing through the brush in 3 different directions. And the floodlight on the front of the clubhouse came on. After the morning hunt, I walked around looking for tracks, and I didn't see not even one track. Saturday night after the evening hunt, I cooked dinner and then go to bed. Again, about 1 a.m., the same shit. This time I grab my .357 mag, but I don't turn on the porch light. Smart thinking, right? Not really looking back. I should have stayed in bed and ignored them. Excuse me. So I jumped out the door this time, and I hear a loud, what I would describe as growl and a huff at the same time. I see one huge black blob go around towards the front of the clubhouse, and the other black blob went across the dirt road, crashing towards the woods, at which time I fired at it. I didn't see anything after that except the image of the flame that came out of the gun that was burnt into my eyeballs. After the Sunday morning hunt, looked for tracks or blood, didn't see anything, and the only thing that I saw was where something big went through the brush. I packed up, went home, and I didn't hunt that evening. The next week, Friday night, I get to the hunting club, park my truck, go into the camper and turn on the lights, and holy shit, there's a tree limb stuck straight up and down through the roof, dead center between the beds. It took out the light fixture. It was about 8 feet long and 6 to 8 inches in diameter. I went outside with handheld floodlight, and about 3 feet was sticking straight up out of the roof. They sent me a message, and they made their point. I always wonder if they thought I was in the bed I always wonder if they thought I was in the bed that Sunday night. I think by now, if you're still hanging out here, you know that's probably not true. 2009, the other members of the club came back. On a hunt in the beginning of that season, I came back to my truck after the morning hunt to find a juvenile left foot track in my boot track next to my truck. The right foot track was 16 inches across a dirt road. I got back in the truck, never hunted again. I paid my hunting dues for the next 3 years, but I couldn't hunt the way I normally did. It just wasn't fun and enjoyable anymore. I gave all my tree stands and camper to my friend, and I just kept the guns and clothes. In 2014, I took up a sport that got me back in the outdoors, but not in the deep woods. Whenever I get near trees, even in the backyard where I know they're not going to be, it makes me look for them, peeking around trees or crawling on the ground, which is how they sneak in to watch you. It just really sucks not being able to feel comfortable in the woods like I was once able to. When I had a gun or even a bow when hunting, I felt like I was on top of the food chain. That feeling is gone forever. Thanks, Steve. Keep doing what you're doing. It's really helped me, and I'm sure a lot of others. You can use my name if you do tell my encounter. And please feel free to call me or text me if you like. And there you go. All right, so you know what I'm going to do? Obviously, with this phone number and the position that you're in, I'm going to mark this as look into, which puts you into the folder of contact this person. And maybe we'll see if you want to go over all this with me. And we'll record it and share it with the people here so they can learn too from your experiences. And we'll get an update of if anything else is going on. And if you want to talk about the close-up encounters after you hear this shared, which I have a feeling you might, and then we'll get into that too. Or not. Either way, I'm glad this has helped. And yeah, that does suck. And that's why we're here. It makes me angry. I'll admit it. I get angry when I hear about my fellow people not being able to enjoy life the way they should because they just didn't know, you know? I hope you're doing well, man. Who's next? My Bigfoot encounters. Hi, Steve. My name is Bob. I used to live at my dad's ranch above the town of Covello, California, in the mid-1990s. We ran hounds in the fall and winter and grew pot in the summer. We were way off the beaten path down an old logging road and had a nice off-the-grid setup. I first encountered tracks that looked like a barefoot person in the early spring of '94. They're coming and going from our main spring. They weren't huge, but bigger than a normal person and really wide. I showed my dad and one of our partners. They thought it was odd, but we didn't think too much of it. In late one fall, I had set up a huge drying tent and had a large generator running, some fans and dehumidifiers. I had several people helping me trim and needed to run up to the ranch house for scissors and rubbing alcohol. I always carried an old 12-gauge pump around, and I hopped on my four-wheeler and started up the road. The ranch house sat in a 20-acre meadow with a couple of large trout ponds below it. The road came out of the timber of above the ponds but below the house. And as I got away from the noise of the generator, I could hear coyotes in the meadow off to my left, and they were going nuts. It sounded like 20 coyotes, all barking at once. As I made my way to the house, I noticed that all 20-plus hounds were in their boxes. They all knew better than to run coyotes, but I'd never seen or heard one in the yard without them telling us all about it. I asked Ma, "What's with the coyotes?" She said, "I have no idea." "What's with the hounds?" I shined my light across the hillside to the city of boxes, and replied, "I have no idea." I got the supplies I'd come for and hopped back on the wheeler, and as I rode back, my headlights swept across the meadow where the coyotes were. I didn't see anything. But as my headlights swept past an old outhouse near the trees, my blood ran cold. It was head and shoulders taller than the outhouse, and tried to hide behind it as I sped by, and it stunk. And it scared me so bad that I dropped the bag I had in my hand. I watched to make sure it wasn't going to jump on me, and it peeked out from behind the outhouse as I went by. I was so freaked out that I forgot about the shotgun under my butt. But now I was stressed out because I live here. I didn't tell anyone about it for a few days. I did go get a Polaroid of the truck. What? I did go get a Polaroid of the track. Sorry, I thought he meant truck. And it was huge. The outhouse was 4 feet wide, 4 feet deep, and 8 feet tall, making this Bigfoot 10 feet tall. We lived there for years after this, and although my family gave me the laugh when I started carrying a 44 mag everywhere I went, it wasn't too long before my dad was a believer. Excuse me. I came home from town one late afternoon, and he had been watching a group of hogs through the spotting scope way high on a ridge above the house. And I'll never forget the look on his face when he apologized for laughing at me. He told me that the thing had killed a large pig right in front of him and slung it over his shoulder. It turned and looked right at him from a mile away, then jumped a 12-foot wide ditch and disappeared into the timber. And our encounters were always in the early spring and late fall. They lived in the high country during the summer and down in the Eel River during the winter. I had a lot more stories, but I don't want to make this too long. God bless you for what you're doing. Jim Amerson, hunting and fishing, with a phone number. All right, this is going to be interesting, I think, to hear from this man, too. I'm marking this as look into. I want to find out exactly how that hog was killed. I've heard of a few people seeing him kill hogs. Let's maybe mark this down here. And it varies. But I'd like to hear how he killed that hog. I don't know why. I don't know why that's interesting to me, but it just is. It gives me an idea how stealthy they are. You know what I mean? And fast. Crazy. I'm sure you and your family have a whole pile more stories. So, you are in the folder where we're going to get a hold of you, so be ready. Thanks for that email, man. I really, really appreciate that. Big time. All right, one more. This is another long one. Holy cow. Okay, here we go. I'm going in. By far the scariest experience I've had in my life is the title of this email. Hey Steve, I've been watching your channel for the past 6+ months, and although my experience with hunting is nil, I continue to learn and appreciate nature more and more from viewing and listening to yours and others' experiences. Well, that's good. Glad to hear. I am the son of a career law enforcement officer. I grew up in a very structured and honest living environment. My father was a tell-it-like-it-was kind of guy and saw a lot of the good and the bad in people. He was very analytical in his thinking, and I believe that's one of the traits that we inherited and learned growing up. Fast forward to the summer of 1985. My parent, sister, and my wife spent time vacationing in Florida on the Gulf Coast in late August. As my wife and I had driven down to meet the rest of the family, we went on to visit my in-laws with my older sister who didn't want to fly back home to Chicago. Excuse me. We were driving back home north of Indianapolis. My sister was asleep in the passenger seat and my wife was asleep in the back. And I was driving in the right lane of the divided 4-lane interstate I-65 north of Indianapolis. It was about 3 a.m., and there's a very little traffic on the road, mostly just tractor-trailer rigs once in a while. A big rig passed me in the left lane doing 85-plus miles per hour. I could feel the air push my car to the right as it went by. Now, I was going 70-plus at the time, but not a lead foot by any means. And I watched the truck pass over a slope in the roadway ahead, and the rear taillights disappeared. When I got to the top of the slope, I could see the truck off the distance, but pulling away. Then I noticed its brakes go on for a few seconds, then off, then on again for a longer period of time, like it was slowing down for something. About 15 seconds later, the brake lights were off and the truck continued on. And as I was coming down the other side of the slope, where the truck had put on its brake lights, I could see something on the right side shoulder. I thought it might be an abandoned car that had been broken down. The night was calm, and even though there were no lights on the interstate, the moon kept things from being total darkness. As I was getting closer, I started to realize that this shadow that I thought might be a small car was anything of the sort. I put my foot on the brake, disengaging the cruise control, and started to slow down. I put on the high beams and wasn't sure what I was seeing. At this point, I reached across and smacked my sister to wake up as I was yelling profanities, "What the F is that?" My sister gained her composure and looked at my pointing and immediately was struck with fear. And as we approached on the shoulder of the road was a big buck that was facing away from us, but I could see its rack on the right side of some big dark object. Between us and the big buck was a big thing, dark in color, but huge. I was probably down to 30 miles per hour by now and slowing as my foot was still on the brake. I yelled back to my wife to wake up and see this thing, but she never did. My sister was becoming frantic with the "let's get out of here" and was grasping towards the console in the middle of the car. I was probably 30, 40 yards from this thing, and now I could make out the large torso, a V shape like a bodybuilder, with a small waist but big shoulders. It was facing away from us, and it was covered in dark, almost black fur. It reminded me of an ape in the zoo, but the hair was more shiny, maybe due to the high beams. I didn't see his face, as his back was to me, and it looked like it was squatting down. It had arms, as it was busy on the underside of the deer. It looked like it was busy eating. As we got right up on it, I started to change lanes and move to the left, not only due to my sister's yelling, but also the fear that was welling up in me. And as we slowly started to pass this thing, it turned to the left. Not the whole body, just the head. It didn't have a neck that I remember, but it had a face that looked wet. It wasn't a gorilla that was staring right at us. It wasn't a man. I don't know what it was, but I know from the look that it wasn't amused we were there. My sister screamed at me again, and I floored the car. I was busy looking back out the right side passenger window and almost lost control of the car and put it into the ditch/grassy area between the northbound and southbound lanes. As I got back on the roadway, I looked in the mirror and swear this thing was watching us. My wife never did wake up during this incident. We stopped for gas once in northern Indiana, and when I told my wife, who had finally woken up, but she didn't believe us. I did try to catch up to that trucker, as there was no other vehicles heading north at the time, but even driving 95 plus for 20 minutes, we never did see the vehicle. I was so razzled by the incident that I got a speeding ticket in Chicago that morning for going 30 over the limit on the Dan Ryan Expressway, just trying to get home. When we met at my parents' house later that night, my dad didn't believe us either and asked if we had been drinking and admonished me for the speeding ticket. To this day, my sister and I don't talk about this to anyone outside of the immediate family. If I bring it up in conversation, it puts the hairs up in my arms. I don't know what we saw that night, but it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a wolf, or anything I've ever seen before and hopefully never will again. It has convinced me that there are some things out in nature that we have no clue about. And just to let you know, I don't camp, hike, or love the outdoors as I did in my younger days. Now that I'm turning 60, I really don't care what people think. I know what we saw, and no one can ever take that away from us. Al Lang. No, they can't tell. Welcome to the club, my friend. Pretty terrifying for not knowing ever before, not knowing anything about it. Right? Terror. Life-changing terror that nobody deserves. Crazy. I wonder if that truck driver's been listening to the channel. I wonder too, you know what? Sometimes you gotta wonder if you were ever to go hang out at those popular places where the long-haul drivers spend the night or shower or fuel up or whatever. Imagine if you just hang out there, I don't know, with a notepad or something, and approached every driver, friendly and serious and to the point, said, hey, we're talking to as many people as we can, and we just want to know if you have possibly seen anything on the road that was alarming, not supposed to be real, scary, whatever, odd. What have you seen? Can you imagine how many truck stops would it take before you started getting a flood of stories? Your first one, how many drivers would it take before you finally had somebody tell you a story? How many drivers do you think when you started canvassing, asking them? I'd say probably second, 1 or 2 drivers in, I'll bet, till you hear a story. I'll bet you. And there you go. All right, I'm going to read one more. One more. This is titled, I Saw Something 35 Years Ago. Steve, I'm pretty sure I'm about exactly the same age as you. My dad's company, Timberline Road Construction, put one of the first roads into Mount St. Helens 3 years after it blew up. No way. Up the South Fort of the Toutle River. South Fort? I think it probably meant South Fork of the Toutle River. Plus, hundreds of miles of logging roads all over Washington. I just want to tell you, I spent my entire life working in the woods, mainly building logging roads, and a little bit of hunting. I want to tell you a story of when we were doing a job in Quillicene, Washington. Quillicene, Quillicene, Washington, on Hood Canal. Me and my friend / co-worker, John Mutter, and myself witnessed the following. We were driving home down the logging road, summertime, kind of late, working long hours, but still light out, and something big and white and really fast crossed our path. Me and John looked at each other, and we didn't know what it was. It was not a goat or a bear. After watching your videos, it jogged my memory, and I wanted to reach out. I just wanted to say, it's legit. Me and my wife own a small sawmilling operation now, Timberline portable sawmilling in Everson, Washington. And I don't care if you share the story or just keep it in your head. I want to show support. Keep on doing what you're doing. My email is sincerely Anthony York. Anthony, appreciate that, man. Yes, they are legit. They are very legit. Okay, one more. Okay, one more. One more. I got so many. There's so many. Scared me. Was it crapping? Louisiana Sasquatch is the title of this email. Hello, Steve. My name is Kelly. I'm a 50-year-old dad of 2 teenagers. I own and operate an auto repair shop. I've been in business in Metairie, Metairie, Louisiana for 25 years. Was in the Naval Reserve for 8 years. I'm not a good writer, as you will see, and this is a short story. What happened to me in the fall of 2014. I'd recently gotten interested in motorcycle riding. One of my mechanics I had just hired owned a bike. He would let me ride it, and found out immediately I really liked the feeling of freedom and complete independence, so I began to look for a bike. I ended up with a used Kawasaki Vulcan 800. Not a hog by a long shot, but fine enough for me. My wife didn't like the idea, but so be it. And after Hurricane Katrina, my parents, who lived in New Orleans, all their lives, moved to Albany, Louisiana. Small town, I guess, 75 miles or so from New Orleans. Metairie, where I live, is only 10 minutes from New Orleans. One weekend, I decided to ride my bike to their house in Albany. I was not used to the traffic on Interstate 10 and 55, the two highways I had to take to get to their house. People do not care that you're on a bike, believe me. Anyway, I made it to their house in Albany. Upon arriving, though, I hit the front brake and slid in their gravel driveway and tumbled onto their carport. Oh no, that sucks. My mother was worried at first, but started laughing so hard she had to go inside. My dad was already laughing. I wasn't hurt, just embarrassed. My wife and kids were coming up in the car, so they didn't see it, thank God. And the reason I tell you all this is it's why I decided to take another route home, it being safer for a less experienced rider. My dad, mother, wife, and both kids agreed. We ate dinner and visited with them until about 10 p.m. So I left on my way home to Metairie. The alternate route is Highway 51. It's a two-lane highway that runs parallel to the Interstate 55, which is raised. 51 runs right through the Maurepas Swamp Wildlife Management Area. The interstate is raised up above it. It was about 6 miles into my ride on Highway 51, and I really had to go pee really bad, so I pulled over, shut off the bike, and walked a little off to the side of the highway. It's pitch black, no streetlights at all. You can hear the interstate above you, but other than that, pure seclusion. And while I was walking to the side of the road, I could smell what I thought was dead fish. Pretty common in the swamp where people fish and leave guts on the side of the road. And the minute that took me to go, I was staring into darkness at what I thought was a willow tree until it moved. Not from the breeze, which did not exist, but on its own power. And I have to say, instead pissing, I felt the urge to crap. I was paralyzed in fear. This thing was only 20 feet in front of me when it ran across the road, and it was at least 9 feet tall and 4 feet wide. It was not a man. It wasn't any type of anything I've ever seen. The very strange thing was it made a kind of fart noise when it passed me, and a loud, awful grunt. I really think this thing was doing its business, and I pulled up on it to do mine. The smell as it farted and ran with 2 steps across the road in the swamp was nauseating. I could feel the concrete below make a shake as it hit the road and ran away. The noise it made was as if it was straining or irritated. For what I could see through the moonlight was an outline of a head on top of long hair, and that's all. It scared me so bad, I never rode that way again on my bike. I didn't tell a soul till now, after I found your channel. I plan on telling my wife and kids, so share if you want. Kelly. Mainly, I like that you do not make fun of any story, no matter how crazy it sounds. Please tell me what you think. It's haunted me since it happened. I fish and hunt a lot down here, and it's always on my mind. Thank you, Steve. All right, man. What do I think? I think that's the first time somebody told me they heard a Sasquatch fart, for sure. I'm not trying to be funny, but I mean, you know, when all you honest people come forward and share what you've seen, experienced here, and then I'll always add in to the audience, picture somebody waking up in the morning and thinking, I need attention so bad. What should I make up today? What kind of detail should I throw in there? You know what I mean? I absolutely believe that's what you saw and heard. And what do I think? I think you know what you saw and heard, especially after listening to the channel. You know what it was. And how many people, you imagine how many people out there that stopped to go pee, we just stopped here for a minute on the side of the highway in the dark, and the timing was just ridiculous, right? Of all the places on that road trip, I guarantee everybody says it to themselves too. Holy shit, of all the places I could have stopped, why there? You know? Random shit eating luck. But there you go. Glad you didn't get hurt on that bike. I got an uncle who's paralyzed from the waist down from a bike accident years ago. They're fun, but dangerous. And there you go. Emails shared. Okay, so that's it for the emails. And I wanted to make a quick mention. I don't know why, but I randomly had a thought the other day about the moon landing. And how can I deliver this so I can get my point across clearly? And how I believe we have been easily manipulated and lied to. Now listen to this, and this will tie into what I'm going to share. What's got the wheels spinning on this topic randomly, but I think I think I should share what I'm thinking. So years ago, I guided a man, very famous guy, and I can't say what he does for a living or who he was because all you'd have to Google was with a famous hunter and what he did, and you'll come up with his name. I don't want to do that. And it's funny, the people that come across in life, some of the sentences you retain that they say to you over the years. So I'll never forget what he said to me one time. And he was he's a funny guy, but he was saying, he goes, man, you know one thing my daddy told me. He always said, and this is exactly how he delivered it to me, laughing. He goes, deny, deny, deny. No matter what, no matter how bad you've been caught, even if you are in there, deny, deny, deny. As long as you deny, it can't stop him from guessing. And what he was joking about was getting caught messing around on your wife or girlfriend. Kind of dark, right? But he was a funny guy. But I'll never forget that he said that because he did have a point. And then, deny, deny, deny. Absolutely deny at all costs, no matter what. And when you think about it, you guys, that is so effective on human beings, it isn't even funny, right? It works with the dominant topic of this channel, does it not? Deny, deny. Well, we've got about 5 years of eyewitness testimony. Doesn't matter. Deny, deny, deny. Right? That's all you got to do. It doesn't matter. Well, we got video. Deny, deny, deny. Well, we got DNA, blood. Deny, deny, deny. Right? Now listen to this. Here's an idea. Here's something that should tell us flat out some bullshit's going down. Not that I give a shit about the moon landing. It doesn't take up much of my brain space. But how about this one? With the speed that technology advances for us, right? Which item would you want to use for an example? Technology, how we communicate with each other. I mean, right now, I can go anywhere in the world with my little InReach thing, and I can send somebody a text or an email. That's pretty advanced, right? Since what? When was the moon landing? The moon landing was July 16th, 1969. So let's just say, okay, they sent some guys up to the moon, they landed on the moon, and they televised it and shot it back to Earth in 1969. Now, in 1969, if we were to tell each other that we were all going to be making and editing our own videos and instantly texting them to one another, posting them online, if we were to tell each other that we would have cell phones with screens on them, we could talk live looking at each other, just like on Star Trek, do you think anybody in 1969 would believe it? Probably not. Do you think in 1969 anyone would believe that we could put a camera on the end of some kind of a microscopic camera and pump it into the veins of people all through their bodies to check it out? How many people in 1969 would believe that technology, right? Drones, jetliners, submarines, whatever. I mean, how fast and rapid technology has advanced for human beings since 1969 is off the charts. So what I'm saying is, if there truly was technology available for a moon landing in 1969, then that technology that they had to, quote, land on the moon in 1969, then I'm pretty confident that in 2025, by now, there would probably be live feed cameras on the moon streaming Earth Rises on YouTube live channels. Guaranteed. right? I would almost bet you dollars to donuts that there would be 7-Eleven on the moon by now if we had the technology to land on the moon in 1969. Don't you think? I also have a funny feeling there'd probably be condos, space bases, whatever, on the face of the moon if we landed on the moon in 1969. Don't you think? So they've got full-size four-wheel drives, apparently, allegedly, running around on Mars right now, transmitting video or pictures to us. You telling me that you've got the technology to put a vehicle on Mars and send photographs to Earth, but nothing's going on the moon since 1969. Nothing. Come on, you guys. Think common sense, right? Just look at it from a different angle. Think of it as common sense. So, what I think that happened in 1969, one or two things, possibly. If we did land on the moon in 1969, and it is legitimate, then possibly in 1969, there's one of two things that happened in 1969. Either one, man did land on the moon, and somebody said, "Don't come here again," or we never went there. Don't you think? So which one do you think it is? When you think of common sense, you think of how far advanced, how fast technology has advanced in all categories surrounding landing on the moon in 1969. So, either we didn't go there at all, or we did go there and some superpower said flat out, "Don't come here again." What do you think it is? Honestly, what do you honestly think happened? And think about your answer. Right? Think about it. Anyway, that was my comical thought that I was tossing around in my head the other day. Trying to look at it with absolute common sense and comparing it to what we claim to be able to do right now. Compare it to what we can do right now. And look back to the year 1969 and why did that technology advance extremely, like everything else, to 2025? Like I said, if it did, we'd have 7-Eleven on the moon right now, and we'd have live stream on YouTube and moon rises, probably from 50 or 60 frickin' different people plus, I would guess. So what do I think? Not that it matters, but what do I think? In 1969, they lied their faces off. We never landed on the moon. Later.